The story begins on a romantic April day as the female protagonist arrives at her new home with all her luggage. She quickly recalls the password her housemate gave her, but upon entering, she realizes the place is much more spacious than she expected. While searching for the room assigned to her, she accidentally opens the wrong door, right at the moment when our protagonist was busy watching some videos. Shocked by the unexpected sight, she completely loses control and starts screaming frantically. The guy panics, dropping his earphones, which causes the audio to play on speaker. Losing his balance, he stumbles, and to make things worse, the girl notices something unusual, making her scream even louder, demanding that he stay away. Amidst all the chaos, she faints, and for him, this moment becomes unforgettable. After all, this was the day they started living together. During her job interview for a position as a game developer, she didn't show much interest in anything specific. To make matters worse, she was one of the most nervous candidates they had ever seen. Our protagonist and his colleague tried to help her calm down, but in the end, their efforts only made things worse. Despite the embarrassing incidents in the interview room, she was hired due to her extensive portfolio as a developer. Still, the memory of her throwing up during the interview left an unpleasant aftertaste for everyone. Putting the awkwardness aside, the protagonist tried to stay positive, motivated by his coworkers' encouragement. Now, back in the present, the girl is still struggling with the aftermath of her unexpected arrival at the house. The protagonist gives her a tour, showing her each room while she keeps her head down, listening intently. No matter how embarrassing their first meeting was, she decides to keep a positive attitude, which puts the guy at ease. On her first day at the office, she is introduced to all her coworkers and gets a seat right next to the protagonist. Excited to start her new journey, she quickly notices how kind her supervisor is. He even offers to help her adjust and grow within the company. Even though she first met him in an unfortunate situation, she begins to realize he's much nicer than she initially thought. As she pushes her embarrassment aside, she finds herself glancing at him more often, almost as if she's developing feelings. Her mind starts to drift into fantasies where the protagonist gets closer, calling her name. Over the weekend, Essie Young isn't happy because she won't be able to go to work. While walking past a couple, her mind starts wandering into inappropriate fantasies, imagining them doing indecent things. No matter how hard she tries, she can't stop these thoughts from invading her head. Struggling with her own imagination, she tries to push these dirty ideas out of her mind. But as she sits on a bench, she feels the weight of her thoughts consuming her body. Reflecting on her habits and mental state, she searches for a nearby restroom and spends a long time there, trying to clear her mind. Meanwhile, an internal battle takes place in her head, as if two little angels were debating her next move. After a long moment of temptation, she finally regains some self-control and decides to go to the office, even though it's her day off. When she arrives at the empty building, she accidentally bumps into Suanai in the dark, who immediately asks why she's there on the weekend. While chatting, Essie Young finds out that only the two of them will be coming to the office for a while, which immediately sends her mind into another spiral of inappropriate thoughts. Just as she's lost in her fantasies again, Suanai suddenly calls her name, startling her completely. Despite the awkward tension, they end up spending time together, reviewing their work and complimenting each other's progress. By the end of the day, they form a stronger connection as they walk home together. One day, during a large company meeting, Essie Young is sitting in the middle of the room, but her mind is elsewhere. She needs to buy new clothes because she lost some on the way to work while being busy with other activities. Instead of feeling embarrassed, she sees the people around her as curious spectators who fuel her confidence. However, as time passes, she realizes she's completely lost in her own world and suddenly faints from exhaustion. When she regains consciousness, overwhelming regret washes over her for giving in to temptation. Suanai approaches to talk to her, but Essie Young starts mumbling nonsense excuses, desperately trying to justify her actions, even though they make no sense. After collecting herself, Suanai asks to see the icons she created for the game. When she opens her computer, Essie Young nearly loses her mind. Her files are corrupted. A coworker reminds them of the deadline, and Soo-and-I suggests she use dummy files for now. Feeling frustrated, they sit together to finalize the work. Wanting to prove herself, Se Young asks her mentor to rest while she handles the remaining tasks, but he insists on helping. Jong stops by to leave them food and drinks, and Se Young finally manages to finish everything by 6 in the morning. Seeing her mentor completely exhausted, she promises herself to become the best mentee possible and avoid distractions at work. When Soo-and-I wakes up from a short nap, he apologizes for dozing off but notices Se Young doing something under the desk. As he tries to help, he realizes there's something more than just her lost purse, leaving him even more confused. At the end of the day, they finally wrap up work and head home. But as Soo-and-I lies in bed, his mind is filled with thoughts of what he had seen at the office. Something within him stirs, making it impossible to get Se Young out of his head. Suddenly, he hears her voice calling his name right beside his bed. She whispers in his ear, catching him completely off guard, especially since he was taking care of himself at that very moment. Her playful teasing only fuels the tension, and as she continues to provoke him, he finally takes control of the situation. Things escalate, leading to an intense climax between them. But when Soo-and-I wakes up, he realizes it was nothing more than a vivid wet dream, leaving him deeply embarrassed. Now fully awake, he decides to grab something to eat, leaving his messy bed for later. As he walks into the living room, he finds Se Young sitting on the couch, offering him some fries. Feeling relieved, he gladly accepts. He had been starving. They sit together, watching a movie and eating fries that she prepared to pass the time. Her kindness begins to mess with his mind, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't stop thinking about her body. As he drinks his beer, he stares at her, lost in thought. Se Young eventually notices his gaze, and the idea of being watched makes her uneasy. For the first time, she realizes that she's not the only one with inappropriate thoughts. Soo-and-I seems just as lost in his own fantasies. However, exhaustion finally takes over, and he dozes off on the couch. Se Young, assuming she was just overthinking things, gently covers him with a blanket so he can sleep comfortably. While cleaning up and finishing her movie, Soo-and-I wakes up and realizes he had been dreaming about Se Young again. Trying to shake it off, he questions whether everything was real or just a trick of his imagination. After all, how could someone so shy, someone who had thrown up during her interview, be the same person who haunted his thoughts so intensely? Feeling guilty for all the things he imagined about his housemate, he is surprised to find that Se Young had prepared breakfast for him before leaving for work. He knows he couldn't have asked for a better roommate, but something about the whole situation seems off. After being single for 26 years, Soo-and-I is determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, even if it means keeping a close eye on Se Young.